The Galactic Council, a governing body that spanned thousands of star systems, was a symbol of order and tradition in the galaxy. Its foundation rested on a meticulously crafted system of rules designed to ensure harmony among its diverse members. These rules, steeped in formality and decorum, dictated every aspect of interaction, from negotiations to casual communication. To the Council, adherence to these protocols was not just a matter of politeness but a cornerstone of their civilization's stability. Breaking them was unthinkable, a sign of disrespect and an affront to centuries of cultural evolution. When humanity first appeared on the galactic stage, they were welcomed with cautious curiosity. As a relatively new species in interstellar terms, their initial introduction was met with the same measured reception afforded to any newcomer. Physically unassuming and technologically intermediate, humans were seen as neither a threat nor a significant asset. However, their rapid ascension through the ranks of relevance began to unsettle the more established members of the Council. Humanity's pragmatism and efficiency were unlike anything they had encountered, but it was their reaction to the Council's rules of etiquette that truly set them apart. Human delegates, upon attending their first Council meetings, found themselves thrust into an environment where simple conversations required layers of ritualistic phrases and gestures. Decisions that could have been resolved in minutes stretched into hours as participants navigated the labyrinth of protocols. For humanity, accustomed to straightforward communication and action, this system was baffling. They attempted to adapt, aware that earning respect in this arena required playing by the rules. Early efforts were marked by awkward missteps and unintended breaches of decorum, often eliciting subtle but pointed reactions from their alien counterparts. As the humans observed, they began to grasp the deeper implications of these rules. They were not just a means of maintaining order, they were a mechanism for enforcing hierarchy. Species with longer histories in the Council wielded their mastery of etiquette as a tool to assert dominance, subtly undermining those less versed in its intricacies. What humanity saw as inefficiency and needless complexity was, to the Council's elder species, a way of ensuring that newer members remained subordinate. Despite their frustrations, humans persisted in their attempts to comply. They studied the customs, practiced the gestures, and memorized the phrases. Yet, the more they immersed themselves in this system, the clearer it became that these rules were not designed for mutual understanding but for control. Conversations revolved around appearances rather than substance, and meaningful progress was often delayed in favor of maintaining protocol. For humanity, whose culture valued results and practicality, this was anathema. The tension between humanity's approach and the Council's traditions began to surface in subtle ways. Human representatives, while outwardly respectful, increasingly pushed for clarity and efficiency in discussions. Their bluntness, though unintended, often caught their counterparts off guard, exposing weaknesses in arguments carefully veiled by etiquette. While some species appreciated this candor, others viewed it as a lack of refinement, a mark of an uncivilized species unworthy of full integration into the Council's ranks. Behind closed doors, debates among human delegates revealed a growing divide. Some argued for continued compliance, believing that adapting to the system was the only way to achieve long-term acceptance. Others, however, advocated for rejecting the rules altogether, seeing them as an unnecessary burden that hindered progress. This internal conflict mirrored the broader challenge humanity faced, balancing their identity with the demands of the galactic order. Over time, humanity's frustrations began to boil over. Key moments highlighted the inherent inefficiencies of the system, such as negotiations stalling over minor breaches of protocol, or critical decisions delayed due to rigid adherence to tradition. Humans watched as opportunities for cooperation and innovation were lost because species prioritized decorum over practical solutions. For a species that had thrived on adaptability and problem-solving, this was not just frustrating but unacceptable. As they navigated these challenges, humanity began to develop a reputation within the Council. To some, they were seen as brash and disrespectful, an upstart species unwilling to respect the wisdom of their elders. To others, they were a breath of fresh air, unafraid to question norms that had gone unchallenged for centuries. This divide among the Council's members hinted at deeper fault lines within the organization, ones that humanity's presence was beginning to expose. Humanity's initial experience with the Council was a trial by fire, a crash course in the complexities of galactic politics and tradition. Yet, even as they struggled, they began to see the cracks in the system, cracks that had long been ignored or dismissed by those who benefited from the status quo. Their journey into the Council was not just about learning to fit in but about discovering what it truly meant to belong. It was a question of whether they could change themselves to match the galaxy's expectations or whether the galaxy would have to change to accommodate them. The turning point came when humanity finally reached its limit with the Galactic Council's exhaustive rules of politeness. After numerous attempts to adhere to these traditions, a breaking point was inevitable. During a high-stakes meeting, where the outcome would determine humanity's participation in a critical trade alliance, the inefficiency of the Council's system reached absurd levels. Endless posturing and excessive formalities delayed meaningful discussions for hours. A human delegate, frustrated by the lack of progress, interrupted the proceedings with a direct question, bypassing the layers of protocol that had kept the discussion stagnant. The room fell silent. The interruption wasn't just a breach of etiquette, it was a declaration of defiance. The Council members, particularly those from species who had spent centuries mastering the art of politeness, reacted with shock and indignation. The humans' question, however, had exposed the core inefficiency of the debate. It was simple, clear, and cut to the heart of the issue, something the Council's traditional methods rarely allowed. While many saw it as an affront, some couldn't deny that it had moved the discussion forward in a way their rituals never could. This moment marked humanity's shift from reluctant participants in the Council's traditions to outright challengers of its norms. Their actions weren't a product of arrogance but a reflection of deeply held values. Humanity valued honesty, efficiency, and results over adherence to unnecessary formalities. To them, the truth mattered more than the method of delivery, and progress was more important than preserving outdated rituals. These values clashed directly with the Council's ethos, which prioritized harmony, appearances, and deference to tradition. The divide became even more apparent as humanity began to articulate their stance. They made it clear that their rejection of the rules wasn't out of disrespect but practicality. To them, the elaborate formalities of the Council were a waste of time and resources, a relic of an era when such systems might have been necessary for unity. Now, they saw these traditions as barriers to innovation and cooperation. While other species had grown accustomed to this system, humanity questioned its purpose, shining a light on practices others had long accepted without challenge. The reaction from the Council was mixed. The more conservative factions viewed humanity's defiance as a dangerous precedent, one that could unravel the order they had spent millennia maintaining. To them, the rules weren't just about politeness, they were a safeguard against chaos. Allowing humanity to dismiss them could inspire other species to do the same, threatening the very foundation of the Council. They argued that humanity's behavior was reckless and disrespectful, a sign that they were unfit for true membership in the galactic community. However, not all members of the Council were opposed to humanity's perspective. Among the less powerful and marginalized species, there was growing admiration for humanity's courage. These species had long been stifled by the Council's traditions, their voices drowned out by the dominance of older, more established members. To them, humanity's actions were a challenge to the status quo, a chance to level the playing field and bring meaningful change to a system that had long ignored their needs. Quietly, some began to align themselves with humanity, seeing in them a potential ally. The Council's initial attempts to reprimand humanity only deepened the divide. Official statements were issued, urging humanity to reconsider their stance and respect the traditions of the Council. These statements, filled with flowery language and thinly veiled threats, only reinforced humanity's frustration. They saw the Council's response as emblematic of the very problem they were highlighting, a refusal to address issues directly and a reliance on appearances over substance. In the face of mounting pressure, humanity made their position clear: they would not conform to rules they believed were counterproductive. Their representatives refused to engage in the rituals that had previously dominated their interactions, opting instead for direct and transparent communication. This decision wasn't without risk. Humanity's defiance alienated many of the Council's more traditional members, who began to isolate them diplomatically. Trade agreements were delayed, alliances put on hold, and humanity found themselves facing significant economic and political challenges. Yet, even in the face of these obstacles, humanity stood firm. They believed that compromising their values for the sake of convenience would set a dangerous precedent, one that would undermine their credibility in the long term. Their willingness to endure these hardships demonstrated a level of resolve that many had underestimated. It wasn't just about rejecting the rules. It was about proving that they could thrive without them, that their principles were strong enough to withstand the pressure. As humanity continued to push back, the Council began to experience an internal shift. The tension between tradition and progress, long simmering beneath the surface, began to rise. Humanity's actions were forcing a conversation that many had avoided for centuries. For the first time, the Council was faced with a species that wasn't content to adapt but demanded that the system itself evolve. This challenge wasn't just about humanity. It was about the future of the Council and whether it could remain relevant in a galaxy that was rapidly changing. Humanity's rejection of alien politeness wasn't just an act of defiance. It was a statement of intent. They were not content to be passive participants in the galactic order. They would engage on their own terms, guided by their own values, even if it meant standing alone. Their boldness sent ripples through the Council, forcing every member species to confront the question of whether tradition was a strength or a weakness in an era defined by change. Humanity's defiance of the Galactic Council's rules of politeness sent shockwaves through the interstellar community. The immediate consequences were as swift as they were polarizing. Traditionalist factions within the Council doubled down, using their influence to impose diplomatic and economic penalties on humanity. Trade agreements were suspended, access to key resources restricted, and human diplomats found themselves excluded from critical discussions. The message was clear: non-compliance would come at a cost. However, humanity's response was equally resolute. Instead of capitulating to pressure, they turned inward, focusing on self-reliance and innovation. The sanctions imposed by the Council, intended to isolate and weaken them, became a catalyst for ingenuity. Humans redirected their efforts to developing alternatives to alien technologies and resources, often improving upon what had previously been imported. This ability to adapt under pressure surprised even their staunchest critics, showcasing a resilience that many in the Council had underestimated. At the same time, humanity's rejection of the Council's norms began to resonate with other species, particularly those who had long felt marginalized. Many of these species had quietly endured the Council's hierarchical traditions, unable to challenge them openly. Humanity's defiance offered a new perspective, a demonstration that it was possible to reject the status quo without being entirely ostracized. Gradually, small but significant alliances began to form. These species found common ground with humanity, drawn to their focus on practicality and fairness over ceremony. The growing support for humanity created fractures within the Council. While traditionalist members continued to push for harsher measures, others began to question the wisdom of alienating a species as resourceful and determined as humanity. These divisions highlighted underlying tensions within the Council that had long been ignored. Humanity's defiance was not just a challenge to the rules of politeness but to the very structure of the Council itself, a structure that many now recognized as outdated and rigid. As these alliances grew, so did humanity's influence. Their direct approach to diplomacy, though unconventional, began to yield results. With fewer layers of protocol to navigate, their agreements were clear, efficient, and mutually beneficial. This stood in stark contrast to the convoluted arrangements often brokered under the Council's traditional system. Species that worked with humanity found themselves reaping tangible benefits without the usual delays or complications. This success added weight to humanity's argument that the Council's rules were not only unnecessary but actively harmful to progress. Meanwhile, the Council's attempts to isolate humanity continued to backfire. Each new restriction or sanction only highlighted the inefficiencies of the existing system. Species that had previously remained neutral began to question the fairness of the Council's actions. The more the Council tried to punish humanity, the more they inadvertently showcased the flaws in their own governance. This shift in perception marked a turning point, as more members began to see humanity not as a disruptive force but as a potential catalyst for much-needed reform. Humanity's ability to navigate these challenges was rooted in their adaptability and pragmatism. They understood that winning over the Council as a whole was unlikely, at least in the short term. Instead, they focused on building relationships with individual species, creating a network of allies who shared their values. These alliances, though informal, began to exert significant influence within the Council. Together, they advocated for change, challenging the dominance of the traditionalist factions. The traditionalists, increasingly aware of their waning control, escalated their efforts to undermine humanity. They attempted to portray them as reckless and destabilizing, a species whose actions threatened the delicate balance of the galaxy. Yet, this narrative struggled to gain traction. Humanity's actions, though unconventional, were undeniably effective. Their growing list of allies and achievements made it clear that their defiance was not driven by recklessness but by a genuine desire for progress and fairness. This period of conflict and tension revealed much about humanity's character. Their refusal to back down in the face of adversity demonstrated a level of resolve that many in the Council had never encountered. More importantly, their ability to inspire others to question long-held norms showed that their defiance was not just about self-interest. It was about creating a system that worked for everyone, not just those at the top. This vision resonated deeply with those who had long been disenfranchised, further solidifying humanity's role as a leader among the Council's reformist factions. As humanity's influence grew, so did their capacity to shape the Council's future. Their defiance, initially seen as a threat, became a rallying point for those seeking change. What began as a rejection of the rules of politeness had evolved into a broader challenge to the Council's way of doing things. Humanity's actions forced a reevaluation of traditions that had gone unquestioned for centuries, opening the door for a new era of transparency, efficiency, and equality. By refusing to conform, humanity had not only survived the Council's attempts to isolate them but had turned their defiance into a source of strength. They had proven that a species could thrive without adhering to outdated norms, inspiring others to do the same. In doing so, they had fundamentally altered the dynamics of the Galactic Council, setting the stage for a future where progress and practicality could take precedence over ceremony and tradition. Humanity's defiance of the Galactic Council's rules and their persistence in following their own principles set in motion a series of changes that reshaped the very fabric of the interstellar political landscape. What began as a rejection of rigid traditions turned into a movement that questioned the relevance of the Council's long-standing governance model. Humanity's rise wasn't just about their own survival or success. It was about forcing the galaxy to confront its entrenched systems and decide whether it was ready to adapt to a changing reality. As humanity's influence grew, so did their role in resolving disputes that the Council's formalities had long failed to address. With their focus on direct and transparent communication, they approached interstellar conflicts in ways that sidestepped the usual bottlenecks of diplomacy. Instead of relying on drawn-out negotiations bogged down by ceremonial protocol, humanity's methods emphasized problem-solving and tangible results. This efficiency gained them the respect of many species who had grown frustrated with the Council's inability to take decisive action. This effectiveness was particularly evident in disputes involving smaller or marginalized species. Under the Council's traditional system, these species often struggled to have their concerns addressed, their voices drowned out by the dominance of more established members. Humanity's willingness to engage with them directly and advocate for equitable solutions earned them allies in unexpected places. These alliances weren't based on formality or ceremony but on shared goals and mutual respect, a stark contrast to the hierarchical relationships that had long defined the Council. The changes sparked by humanity's defiance began to ripple through the Council. Reformist factions, inspired by humanity's example, gained momentum. Calls for transparency, efficiency, and inclusivity grew louder, forcing even the most conservative members to acknowledge the need for change. Humanity's actions had exposed a truth that many had long suspected but never dared to articulate. The Council's systems, while effective in their time, had become outdated and were now holding the galaxy back. Traditionalist factions, though still powerful, found their influence waning. Their attempts to isolate humanity had not only failed but had backfired spectacularly. By highlighting the inefficiencies and inequities of the existing system, they had inadvertently strengthened humanity's position. Many species, even those who initially viewed humanity with skepticism, began to see them as a necessary counterbalance to the stagnation of the Council. The idea that change was both possible and necessary took root, creating a shift in the galactic order. Humanity's role as a disruptor was not without its challenges. Their defiance of tradition continued to attract criticism, with some accusing them of undermining the Council's authority for their own gain. Yet, humanity's actions consistently demonstrated that their focus was on progress rather than power. They championed initiatives that benefited the broader galactic community, from advancements in interstellar trade to innovations in conflict resolution. Their contributions, both practical and ideological, made it increasingly difficult for their detractors to paint them as selfish or reckless. One of the most profound impacts of humanity's defiance was the cultural shift it inspired across the galaxy. For centuries, many species had viewed conformity to the Council's traditions as an unshakable norm. Humanity's refusal to accept this norm challenged others to reevaluate their own beliefs and practices. Species that had long adhered to the rules out of habit or fear began to question whether these traditions truly served their interests. This newfound willingness to question authority marked the beginning of a broader cultural awakening, one that humanity had unwittingly catalyzed. This cultural shift was accompanied by tangible changes within the Council itself. Reformist members proposed amendments to the Council's charter, aimed at simplifying procedures and ensuring greater representation for all species. While these proposals faced significant resistance, they also found unprecedented support. The debates that followed were contentious but necessary, signaling a willingness to confront issues that had been ignored for far too long. Humanity's influence was evident in these discussions, not just in their direct contributions but in the principles they had championed. As the Council adapted, humanity's role continued to evolve. They moved from being seen as outsiders to becoming central figures in shaping the galaxy's future. Their ability to balance pragmatism with idealism allowed them to mediate between opposing factions, bridging divides that had seemed insurmountable. They were not perfect, and their methods were not universally embraced, but their impact was undeniable. Humanity had proven that change was possible, even in a system as entrenched as the Galactic Council. Looking ahead, humanity's legacy within the Council and the galaxy as a whole is one of transformation. Their defiance was never about rejecting tradition for its own sake but about challenging systems that no longer worked. They forced the galaxy to confront its flaws and offered a vision of a future where progress, inclusivity, and efficiency could coexist with respect for diversity. This vision, while not yet fully realized, continues to guide the Council's ongoing evolution. In the end, humanity's greatest achievement was not their survival, or even their influence, but their ability to inspire others to think differently. They showed that a single species, guided by conviction and resilience, could challenge the status quo and create a path for change. The galaxy is a different place because of humanity, a place where questioning norms is no longer taboo, and where the future is shaped by those bold enough to imagine something better. Humanity's defiance was a catalyst, their persistence a foundation, and their vision a beacon for a new era. Humanity's transformation from a misunderstood newcomer to a central force within the Galactic Council was a testament to their resilience and unyielding commitment to their principles. With their defiance of outdated norms, they not only challenged the traditions that had defined interstellar politics for millennia but also redefined what it meant to be a member of the Council. Their rise was neither smooth nor uncontested, but their impact was undeniable, creating a ripple effect that would shape the galaxy's future. As humanity's influence grew, so too did their responsibility. Their refusal to conform had placed them at the center of attention, and their actions were now scrutinized more than ever. This pressure could have forced them to compromise, but humanity chose instead to double down on their values. They maintained their straightforward approach, continuing to prioritize substance over appearances and results over ritual. This consistency earned them respect from allies and even grudging acknowledgement from some of their staunchest critics. The alliances humanity forged with other species became a cornerstone of their strategy. These relationships were built on mutual respect and shared goals, rather than the hierarchy and deference that had long characterized the Council's internal dynamics. By empowering marginalized species and giving them a platform, humanity strengthened their own position while also reshaping the Council's balance of power. Their success highlighted the potential of a more inclusive and cooperative approach, inspiring others to reevaluate their own strategies. At the same time, humanity's role as a disruptor came with challenges. Traditionalist factions, though weakened, continued to resist their influence. These groups saw humanity's methods as a threat to the stability of the galaxy, arguing that their defiance set a dangerous precedent. Attempts to undermine humanity's alliances and initiatives were frequent, but these efforts often backfired, exposing the rigidity and inefficiency of the old system. Humanity's ability to navigate these obstacles further cemented their reputation as a species that thrived under pressure. One of humanity's most significant contributions was their ability to innovate in both diplomacy and technology. Their pragmatic approach to problem-solving led to breakthroughs that benefited not just themselves but the entire galactic community. They introduced new systems for trade, resource management, and conflict resolution, often bypassing the bureaucracy that had previously hindered progress. These innovations demonstrated that change didn't have to mean chaos and that tradition didn't have to be discarded entirely to achieve meaningful results. As their influence expanded, humanity began to address the deeper issues within the Council's structure. They advocated for reforms that simplified procedures, reduced the influence of entrenched elites, and ensured that all species had a voice. These efforts were met with resistance, but humanity's growing coalition of allies provided the leverage needed to push these changes forward. Over time, their vision of a more equitable and efficient council began to take shape, though the process was far from complete. Humanity's actions also sparked cultural shifts across the galaxy. Their insistence on questioning norms encouraged other species to do the same. This newfound willingness to challenge authority and tradition created a more dynamic and innovative interstellar community. While some feared the instability that came with such change, others embraced it as an opportunity to build a better future. Humanity's role in this transformation was both a catalyst and a guide, showing that progress was possible without abandoning one's identity. The legacy humanity was building extended beyond their immediate impact on the Council. They became a symbol of resilience and adaptability, qualities that resonated with species facing their own challenges. Their journey from an underestimated newcomer to a leader within the galaxy inspired others to believe in the power of perseverance and the value of standing by one's principles. This influence, though intangible, was perhaps their greatest achievement, shaping the mindset of the galactic community in ways that would endure for generations. While humanity's rise was marked by conflict and controversy, it was also defined by hope. They proved that a single species, even one facing overwhelming odds, could make a difference. Their defiance of the Council's norms wasn't just about rejecting the past, it was about building a future that worked for everyone. By challenging the status quo, they opened the door for reform and innovation, creating a foundation for a more inclusive and dynamic galaxy. In the end, humanity's story was not one of domination or conquest but of transformation. Their impact went beyond the rules they rejected or the alliances they forged. They reshaped the very nature of the Galactic Council, proving that change was not only possible but necessary. Their journey was a testament to the power of conviction, the importance of adaptability, and the potential of a species willing to challenge the limits of what was expected. Humanity had become more than just a member of the Council. They had become a force for progress in a galaxy that desperately needed it.